it all comes down to the models, right?
Yep. Well,
And
no, actually, there's two problems here I found because
okay,
when you have if we're starting the conversation, I'll go.
go.
Okay. Um, you have the first of all, you have the application itself. That has to be hosted somewhere. Now, there's two food I won't call two paths you can go with right here. You have like me where I was when I looked through the research this morning, I do not need a so-called development PC up all the time. So I only want to be billed for 12 hours a day that this is up and running, and not all providers handle that. So if you wanted your app that you want to put in the cloud and you only want to be billed basically for what you use, there are only some providers that do that. If you are looking to host BrainDrive up, have it up 24 by 7, your family and friends can use this at any time and up and available, it has another group of providers that you could go to that offer that and bill you accordingly for that type of stuff. So these two foods of thought I found really quickly. And then you get into the inferencing side, the AI. It's all about the GPU. And from there,
But on but on the app side, so the interface,
yep,
we're talking about the databases, and we're talking about like any tools layer, like BrainDrive Studio,
yep,
right?
yep,
Or N8N or something like that you
yep.
want to keep up. That, if you want to keep that running 24/7, is $5 a month or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like not an expensive
Oh, it
endeavor.
really depends on how far you want. Because if you get into like my world, okay, it's still not, it's still peanuts, but it's like it gets to $30 and $50 a month because you're needing to run a little bit more and actively.
Why?
Just because you need more CPUs and more RAM.
But not if you're not, I'm talking about not including AI models.
Okay, yeah,
I'm
okay,
talking
okay,
about
yeah,
just the interface,
yep.
the databases, and the tools layer. No
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, because if you're using cloud, or no, sorry, Google Cloud, the way they bill, then this is what I was talking about. Then you can get down to $5 a month because you only get billed for actually what you use.
Right, but I've spent a lot of time researching and thinking about this.
Yep.
So, what I came back to, and I just want to confirm
Yep.
or unconfirm that I'm correct here, is put aside AI models for a minute. You're
Yep.
not doing any AI models. The
Yep.
other three components of the AI system are the interface, the databases, and the tools layer, right?
Yes.
Okay. So forgetting about AI,
Yep.
all I'm looking to do is host the interface, the databases, and the tools layer. That's like hosting a website, right?
Pretty close. Yes.
And so, like a website, if we're talking about a personal AI system,
Hmm.
regardless of whether it's me using it to write or you using it to develop, not including the AI inference, right?
Yep.
It's a very small hosting.
It's smaller, but my development because every time I do something, it has to rebuild. Then comes into cores on the CPU and the RAM, and a good example of the previous project I was working on. If you press compile, that was 6 minutes.
Okay, so what you're saying is, um, if you're building an application that has no AI included in your
Yeah,
hand coding
yeah,
it, which is what
yep,
we're talking about
yep,
here, no AI, you need as a developer a more powerful computer than the
yep,
average person because of this. You have to compile your code and you don't want that to take 3 hours or stall
yep.
out or whatever.
Now,
Okay.
once your code is compiled and you enter your world, you're using the application. You're fine. You can
Okay.
probably get away with $5 a month because
Right.
it's already built. You've already if it took 2 minutes when you first got the application, you built it, it's running now. You're
Okay. So
you're gold.
this is what I was missing then.
Yep.
Okay, good. So basically, putting aside development, I can't really think of any other use case where, I guess, if you're like, if you have, I guess I guess the two things I could think about here then would be if I'm coding,
Yep.
right? And if the tools that I'm running on my brain drive or whatever
Yep.
interface that it is are very resource intensive,
Yep.
then I'm going to need a more powerful hosting
Yep.
environment.
Yep.
But if we're just so okay, So there is a level within the sort of website. Okay, and I guess it would be three things. It would be the development, it would be the tools that are running on my
Hmm.
AI system via BrainDrive Studio or N8N
Yep.
or whatever you're using, and then it would be the number of people I have hitting that, right? And
Yes. Yep.
but it is still kind of like a website in that sense because if I have a website where I'm like offering a trading system or real-time charting system or that type of stuff, I'm
Yep.
going to need a more powerful computer to
Yep.
run that
You'll have to be able to
website.
scale up.
So the equivalent, the website analogy still works. And I would say a personal AI system that you're just using for chat, which is probably 90% of people right
Yep.
now, is kind of like having a personal blog. Like you don't need much,
Yep.
right?
Exactly.
Okay, but as soon as you start offering services or coding or running,
Yep.
intensive applications, now you're going to need to bump up that host.
Yeah, if
Right.
you're running BrainDrive, you had NAN in the background, you have three NCP servers running as well, and you have this two-core, 2 GB RAM CPU running and like that, it's
Right.
going to start chugging at some
Melting
point. Going,
down. Okay. All right. All right. Now I understand.
yeah,
Okay. All right. So, but also within these three components, before we get to the AI
yeah,
inferencing, you could technically host these in different places, right? So, for
yep,
example, if I'm running intensive BrainDrive Studio plugins or N8N workflows or some other agent platform, I could have that on a beefy server, right? And I could
yep.
still have my interface on a $5 a month, server, right?
Yeah, you could have BrainDrive sitting on, let's say, Google Cloud, because
Yep.
that runs only when you're using it. And then you could be using Oracle's cloud service because NAN will run there for free all day long.
Right.
So you could be leveraging two very cost-effective solutions, and all you do is say, "Hey, my NAN server is on this IP over here," and use that. And it doesn't care about anything else because even when
Right.
they're on the same system, you're still going to tell it use this IP.
Right. And this is where BrainDrive makes it really easy because we'll just have a plugin and okay, where's your N8N server or where's your
There you go.
BrainDrive
Yep.
Studio hosted? Bam, and you're off to the races and you don't have to set up all this custom logic and blah blah blah.
Just like BrainDrive memory, when I said all we need to know really where it's located at, we don't need to do anything fancy beyond that. And a little plugin takes care of that aspect. We're not
Okay,
recreating
and
the
but the
wheel.
same thing is true for a website, right? Like if I wanted to have a real-time charting application with trading, I could
Yep.
have that hosted somewhere else, and the main website, could be on a $5 a month thing, and as long as it's not getting a lot of traffic, you're fine. So the
Yep.
website analogy does still hold
Yep.
together. It's just I didn't think through all the scenarios. Okay, now, and it is still where the website analogy breaks down is when we start to get to AI inference and AI model hosting,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
that's when everything breaks. That's the new rule.
Okay, so let me tell you how I understand it, and you can
Yep.
tell me if I'm wrong or not. Um, so, um, you know, first off, these models are big; they take up a lot of space.
Yep.
Most models,
In
yeah,
in two capacities: storage space,
yeah,
because it has to sit somewhere at any time of the day, and
right,
then you have
right,
VRAM, which however it's
right.
running, it's good. That's where it gets very expensive right there.
Yeah, so it needs somewhere to sit even when it's idle, and
Yep.
that's just normal SSD, storage.
Yep.
And then when you want to use that model, it needs to load into the RAM of the computer or the VRAM,
Yep.
right? And that's how you start inferencing it,
Yes.
right? Okay. So, depending on the size of the model and how many models you're downloaded onto the server or the
Yep.
computer or whatever it is, you're going to need a good amount of SSD, and most importantly, you're going to need a good amount of RAM and VRAM. And this is where it starts to get expensive because adding some more storage for models to sit idly is like it's whatever.
It depends on your viewpoint because you're saying SSD, but you get anybody who's into AI and they're on MVM. They're like as fast as humanly possible. If it's
The
the
store,
latest,
the disk space.
yes, yeah. So they're on the cutting edge for that because when you're talking about, let's say, a 7 dB model, even if at Quant 4, you're at 36 gigs, So if you're on an SSD, that could take you up to a minute to load to begin with, and
Okay,
they don't and they
so
don't
the
want to
type
wait a
of
minute.
storage
Yes.
matters. It's
Yep.
not just the RAM and the VRAM. The type of storage also matters in terms of, okay, but this is where sort of the next thing comes into play, and we can talk about MVM,
Yep.
in relation to that, is um, you know, how often, how available you want this AI model to be,
Yep.
and how quickly you want that first print to be when you chat with it
Yep.
are major considerations,
Yes.
right? Because if you want to be able to hit, tell me a joke,
Yep.
on the interface and it fires back, um, having a really powerful computer is not enough, right? That
Yes.
computer needs to be on all the time, and the model needs to be loaded into RAM, VRAM,
Yep.
right, all the time,
Yep.
right? And it needs to be active, right? And so
Yes.
basically what you're talking about, if you want the fastest time to first print and you're self-hosting, is you need a very powerful machine, assuming you're running a powerful model,
Yep.
right? And you need it to be on 24/7 with the model loaded into RAM and VRAM, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so this is why you go from, you know, when you want just to run a 1B model on your laptop for free,
Y-
there's not like now you go up to 5, 10, 15, 20, blah, blah, blah. It's like you go right from running this model on your computer for free to like $200 or more per month,
Yep.
right? Because you need an always on server, in the cloud or, on-prem or
Yep.
whatever, right? So there's no, if you want the model available and fast to first inference, to get back to you, there's really no middle ground.
No, exactly. It's a cliff. It's
Right.
like you're doing great for $5 a month, $5 a month, $55 a month to $300 a month.
Yeah.
It's just
Right.
blah blah blah.
Okay. So now we get into idling and, okay, for example, if this is your personal AI system, you could power down that server if you have a box, let's
Yep.
say you're hosting it locally and it's always on, you could shut that server down from midnight to 6 a.m. or whatever,
Yep.
whenever you sleep normally,
Yep.
right? And if that's in your house, that's going to save you the electricity cost,
Yep.
basically, right? Which can be substantial. If it's with a cloud hosted provider, you have a dedicated server,
Yep.
then they have options for this where you can idle it, you can power it down, and the upside of that is that's going to save you a lot of money. The
Yep.
downside is when you can't use it when it's powered down, number
Yep.
one, and number two, first thing in the morning when that server turns back on and you say tell me a joke, it's got to now load the model again
Yep.
into RAM. And so that first response is going to be, instead of seconds, it might be a minute or two.
Yeah, and this is where understanding how the cloud provider bills you is important because if you, I know you've seen the ads, Linode, they're
Yep.
all over the place, or
Yeah.
Linode, however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Now they'll tell you per hour billing,
Right.
but the truth is, as long as that instance is on the server, on or off, you're being
Right.
billed.
Right.
Because yeah, only because they reserve RAM, they reserve CPU, so in their eyes, it's always on, even when you turned it off.
Right.
So you're
Right.
being billed now. Now Google Cloud though, they have what's called compute billing. They only bill you for what it does when it's running. So when you do you send a chat to it and all like that, then it's like, okay, you want me to do something, I'm going to bill you now, and that's why their billing is orchestrated very differently.
Right, but that is a serverless architecture, right? Like you do
Yep.
not have your own dedicated machine where all of
Yes.
your stuff is running and
Yep.
where you can have your own compliance details and SLAs if you're offering a service and blah, blah,
Yep.
blah. With that, you have to have a dedicated server. So there's no, you only get billed when you use it. It's just like
Yep.
you're paying for that service, the
Yep.
server, right?
Yeah. So it's understanding what you want, what you need, and how you're going to be billed for that.
Right. And so but when you move to serverless cloud,
Yeah.
right, this is when we get to now people are offering scale to zero,
Yep.
right? And so, they're offering the service so that whenever you're not chatting with or doing whatever with your
Mhm.
AI system, you're not getting billed, right?
Yep.
And but still this time to first,
Yeah. Oh,
when you
yep.
hit it the first time is an issue, although it seems like this is where a lot of the innovation is happening and people trying to get that not only scale to zero working well, but also I forget what they call that before it loads up or whatever, but that time,
Time to first token.
time to first token,
Yep.
right? um, down. So it's really those two things. It's like now you're not operating within your own environment, right? You're operating in, and have to deal with all the terms of service and everything for these different cloud providers. And it's going to be slower than if you have a dedicated
Yep. Yep.
machine. Okay. Now, what about virtual private? What about VPC, like virtual
V
private
VPSs, virtual
VPSs,
private
virtual
servers.
private servers? How does that?
That's where we get to Linode.
Okay.
Linode and companies like that offer VPSs, and this is
Yep.
where I believe the lowest I see for on those kind of things, probably you can probably get down to $10 a month, $19 a month, but
Yeah.
that is basically your own computer sitting in somebody else's house or data center, for lack of better words. You can log into it like normal. You can do remote protocols. I can do terminals into it. You can remote desktop, which is basically like Windows and such environments, and it'll look just like a Windows machine if that's what you have loaded. Um, they're a little more costlier because, as you said, you own it all. You control.
But in this case, the big difference is you're not having to pay for a whole machine. You're paying for a slice of machine, but it's your dedicated part of that machine.
Yep,
And you have a lot of the same, they virtualize the server. So
yep,
you don't have to pay for the whole thing. You're only paying for your slice. And also, it works very similar to if you did have your
yep,
own dedicated server,
yeah.
right?
Because let me show you. Hold on, let me figure out. There we go. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Share that. Okay, do you see my Proxmox screen?
Yes.
Okay, this is a server. It allows me to carve it up any way I want. I use Trillium, the first one, the 100. That's Trillium. That's for taking notes. I can access it anywhere, type
Okay.
thing. So, Proscrat, there's my database. I can
Yep.
access this anywhere.
Yep.
I have an Ubuntu server. I can
Yep.
access it anywhere. I can now the advantage of this is I can shut this down, save it, store it somewhere, and it won't be running. And then if I want to get back to work on it, I can load it back up.
Right.
And this is where like the cost effectiveness because I can just shut it down if I want and bring it back up and it's not using CPUs. And this is where, like I said, the billing, it doesn't matter. It's even just sitting there. They take up CPUs. It's like that's just the nature of the beast. But this
Right.
is what your VPS, this is what it looks like behind the scenes when it's running
Okay. All right.
because I can run 3 or 4 Ubuntu servers on this. I can run a Windows 10 desktop. It doesn't care. And then I
Okay.
can log into each of them separately, and they are their own separate. We'll go with country
Yep.
analogy.
Yep.
And Proxmox is a continent. So
Yep.
each one gets divided up. It has its own rules. It's as if it sits on its own
Yeah, but
hardware.
this is you dividing up a server,
Yep.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
then, and like I said, and then you can come into it.
But the hosting companies do this for you, right? Like if
Yes.
I
Yep.
don't have to go in and do the okay, so let's stick with a little this is
That's why I'm
above
just showing you how
that.
it starts so
Yeah.
that you can get to it's it is a part your own slice of it, but it's almost like your own PC though. Your
Yeah,
own
I got it.
hardware. There's no difference.
I got it. All right.
Okay.
Can you stop sharing for a
Yep.
minute, please? So what I haven't seen though, because I have an AI system right now just playing around,
Yep.
hosted on a virtual private server at Hostinger, and I've looked around at a
Yep.
lot of the different things. And it doesn't seem like they offer, it's only like high-powered CPUs, right? There's no GPU with
Yep.
this server. So basically, I can run like a 1 billion model fast on it,
Yep.
but not like once you get to even 4 billion, the time it takes for it to load, the response time, even once it is loaded, is very slow because it doesn't have a GPU, correct?
Yes. The way to tackle that is twofold, and depending on which way you want to pick. Linodes and companies like that, they have the ability to attach a GPU to your
So I guess
instance.
why don't they have a GPU?
Hostinger,
The
because
VPN, the VPN.
Hostinger doesn't do it because they're not an AI company. They're not sitting there with that data center with all the GPUs. You go to Linode and cloud providers who can give you your own slice of computer, but they're not a web company.
Can I get a GPU with that slice of computer or
Yep.
no? Is it a
Yes.
lot more expensive?
It adds to the price. I with Lino, there we go. Because I was doing this research. Oh, I wasn't actually. Okay. I'd have to look, but yes, it adds probably based on the GPU you want. They do the same thing with their hourly fee.
Right.
So if you
So
wanted
it's
to,
not technically, it seems like from what I've seen that the VPS side of this is basically you get your slice of a computer without a GPU. And then if you want GPU resources, you have to rent them separately.
yes, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Now the second way to get around that, hold on, because I said there's two. Open Router.
Yeah.
Because Open Router houses all the models basically, and you get an account there, and you have an API key.
Yeah, I understand.
Yep.
We're going to get to that.
Yep.
So, but basically, um, there's really no way right now to have a chat GPT like self-hosted experience in the cloud for chat GPT prices, right?
Oh no. Yeah.
If you want to host your own models,
Yep.
right? It's just not right now, even with scale to zero and optimizing costs and turning off at night and all of that. If you really want your models on your virtual private server at the low end or your own dedicated server, you're talking about, I mean, you couldn't do it for under 50 bucks a month and probably
Yep.
not under 100 or maybe even 200 a month, depending on the size of the model that you're running.
That's why they knew $20 a month was a steal.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, if you really want to have full control over the AI models,
Yep.
you have two options, right? You can use really small models and run them very cheaply on your own laptop or on a VPS for
Yep.
5, 10 bucks a month, whatever it is for a 1 billion parameter model.
Yep.
You can just deal with the fact that you're not going to have access to the intelligence anywhere close to the state
Yes.
of the art models, which in some cases may not matter. We found with article summary, we haven't
Eh,
even tuned anything and they all work great, right?
Yep.
So there's certain scenarios, if you want to build a persona and it does a very specific type of chat or whatever, you can probably run that on your, average modern laptop all day long. No
Or
problem.
BrainDrive Concierge.
Yeah.
All it took was a little training,
Yep.
and it knew the knowledge that no even state of the art would have
Right,
known.
right. But the bottom line is you can do a lot with these small models and you're going to be able to do even more. They're tuning them like, and
Yep.
you can work on them. And we're going to show you how to do that within BrainDrive and our community and all that. So it's not like you're shit out of luck if you really want full privacy and to own your own AI models. You can definitely do that. But you got to recognize the trade-off is you're not getting anywhere near the power of a ChatGPT like model for anywhere close to the price of ChatGPT if you want to maintain full ownership and control over the model. But that's not the only option. And this is where you started talking about it's not use ChatGPT if you only want to pay $20 a month or Claude or whatever or
Yep.
nothing, right? There's these inference hosting providers that they specialize in hosting AI models and they give you API access. And this, you're just like if you're using ChatGPT via their API, you're just paying via tokens. And if you're not doing like heavy coding or something like that, you can get BrainDrive or other open source AI systems to operate at ChatGPT levels for potentially even less than $20 a month.
I've never heard of anybody going over $20 who isn't coding.
Right.
It's the coders that destroy their token counts and stuff
Right.
like that. And it's
Right.
getting better, but they're still the only ones. If you
Right.
normal day-to-day users, even if you like, I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna use you for ChatGTP for every Google search, you are still so far under $20.
Right. So you can actually, if you're willing to use one of these inference hosting
Yep.
providers, you can potentially save money versus a ChatGPT or a Claude subscription, right?
Es-
And,
es-
go ahead.
Especially if you become not model savvy and you understand that sometimes a lot of times I don't need ChatGTP. I can
Right.
use Llama.
Yep.
Llama's a lot cheaper even
Yeah.
still. So it's
Yeah, so
like you
you
get
can, and this is where BrainDrive again is going to make this easy for you because you very easily be able to switch between models that are running
yep,
locally on your computer for the small models and the private use cases, and then on the instances where you want to go out to a chat GPT like model, or there's also open source versions of models that are closely, competitive to
yep,
that. You can use one of these managed hosting providers via API, managed AI hosting providers via API, very fast, only pay for the use of it. And you can switch between, and you're going to be able to have different pages in BrainDrive for different use cases where that
yep.
model is already set and you don't have to think about it again once it's done, right?
And this is where two words or one word comes in so handy: model match.
Yeah.
Because this educates users to understand that they do not need the biggest, baddest, most expensive to solve
Right,
their problem.
right.
They can sit there and learn how these models work a little bit, just enough to know, wait a minute, you're really good at doing email summarization, so I don't have to read every email that hits my desk. Let's do that. It's like, and so that takes them from not knowing anything about AI to just enough to get their job done.
Right. And so with BrainDrive, so Model Match is going to be our model
Yep,
evaluation website directory where you're going to be able to, for free, go in and look at the performance of different models and choose the best model for your specific use case on BrainDrive Model Match. And then with BrainDrive Core, you're going to be in BrainDrive Studio, you're going
yep,
to be able to build custom pages and interfaces, et cetera, set those up for all your different use cases using the best model. And for the ones where you don't care about privacy and you're okay using even OpenAI or
yep,
Anthropic models, you can do that. For the ones where you care a little bit more about privacy, you can use an open source, host like Grok, et cetera. And the ones you want to be completely private, you can run on your own computer. And
yep,
also the cost, right? You can do it for
yep,
free with a small model on your computer for those use cases. And you can go up the scale if you want to run multiple servers, because
yep,
you have some huge system you're running with BrainDrive, you're going to be able to do it all.
yep.
Okay. So, all right. So I think that's a pretty good lay of the land in terms of AI. Oh, I guess, you know, uh, and basically also there's going back to where we started the conversation with BrainDrive, you're also going to be able to run whatever pieces you want wherever you want, right?
Yep.
So, you can host everything. If you really want to host your own AI models and you want to host your interface and your database and your tools layer all on your computer, you can do that. If you
Yep.
want to host it all in the cloud, you can do that. And if you want to host one piece on your computer, another piece in the cloud,
Yep.
another piece over here, you can do all that too. So it's like complete freedom and flexibility in terms of handling this hosting challenge.
Yeah, because it's impossible to determine, especially as you notice with all the technology that exists, how each individual is going to not just how they envision running themselves, but then how the technology is going to have to be run. And so
Right.
this gives, as it evolves, as it expands, we won't care because
Yeah, and you'll be able to hook into other people's services.
yep,
People will be able to hook into things that you've built. So, like having this freedom and flexibility to go wherever you want and do whatever you want, even between different use cases, is going to be huge.
yep,
All right, awesome. So this really will really help finalize the guide, the ultimate guide to AI system hosting, and we'll throw that in as a link to the description. We'll post the video and everything, and feel free to leave us a comment if you have any questions or other ideas, etc. We're happy to hear from you.